it's not about the amount of money you have. If you want work to be optional, it's about the income that your portfolio is generating. And it's not just about the income. It's also about how sustainable the income is. Today, I'm excited about today's show, though, Zach. We're going to be talking about the three things that you must get right if you want to make work optional.
Right.
Right? So maybe you're sitting there thinking, man, I want to make work optional within the next couple of years. I would love to retire, or at least have the ability to retire if that's what I choose to do. What do you have to do? Like, what's your checklist?
Sure.
What are the three things you have to do? That's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Well, I'm excited to hear that. And this phrase, work optional, I feel like this is something that people are starting to say more and more, and not just retirement.
Yeah, that's very true. I think retirement traditionally, there's still, let's not get past this. A lot of people out there, maybe you're one of them, a lot of people, traditional retirement is their goal. Their goal, financially speaking, is to build up their assets to a point where they can walk away from work and then just kind of sit back and enjoy life for the rest of, for whatever time they have left on this earth. And nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a lot of people, that's the right thing to do.
Yep.
There are a lot of other people, however, they say, I'm not really built to retire. Look, my wife, Becky, her brother, Chris, he retired at the age of, I think he's 60 or 61. Zach, he was retired for, I think, almost 3 months.
Didn't last long at all.
And he's already back to work again.
Sure.
Does he need the money? Does he have to work for the money? The answer is no. He's got plenty of money. He's fine. He has the financial ability to be retired. However, he doesn't have the emotional mindset of being retired. He's not there yet. Trying to get to the point of, we would call it being work optional, is all about how do you structure your finances in such a way that you're like my brother-in-law, Chris, where you're working not because you have to, you're working because you want to. It's a choice, and it's a choice that is, it increases your sense of self-worth or your satisfaction or what have you. Either way, you're working because you want to, not because you have to.
Right. That sounds like That's great mindset. I'm sure a lot of our listeners would love to be in the same position.
Oh, of course. So we're going to talk today about three things you have to do.
Yes.
Right? So let's go ahead and let's maybe lay these three things out first.
Okay.
And then later in the show, we'll kind of dive into each one of them individually.
Okay.
Right? And by the way, I guess we could say that I personally am somebody like Chris.
Yeah, 100%. You were retired for a little bit.
Yeah, I was retired for 4 months.
Yeah.
And my wife kicked me out of the house and said, all right, you're driving me crazy. Mike, you're driving me crazy. You got to get back to work, man. Right. You're killing me. And which, by the way, the timing was good because I was driving myself crazy too.
Too much golf. No.
Well, is it possible to golf too much?
Maybe when you were retired for 4 months, it could have been.
I was golfing every day, and
Yes.
You're right. I got sick of it pretty fast.
Yeah.
So in any event, what are the three financial decisions that you have to make so that work can be optional? Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about on tonight's show. Decision number one, or really maybe strategy number one, is you need to make sure that your portfolio is generating enough income to replace your paycheck.
Okay.
So this is the first thing, and what's kind of interesting is I always get the question, hey, Mike, how much money do I need to accumulate? How much money do I have to have in my 401k or my 403b or my IRA? How much money do I need in order to be able to retire?
Right. What's that magic number?
What's my number? In fact, I remember several years ago, there was a commercial from ING, which is today called Voya. Mm-hmm. And they had people walking around, in the city, and like little numbers were above their heads.
Yeah, their magic number.
Yeah, and it was like, what's your number?
Yeah.
And they're talking about how much money do you need to retire? That is the wrong question. Mm-hmm. That is the wrong question, and it's not a very intelligent question. The right question is, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later, but the right question is not how much money do you need to retire. It's how much income do you need your portfolio to generate to retire or to make work optional,
Right.
as we're talking about this evening. So that's decision number one, or strategy number one, if you want to call it that. Question number two, what are you going to do about the taxes that you're going to be facing in retirement? Now, if you're like a lot of people, you probably have a lot of your retirement savings in your 401k, your 403b, an IRA, something like that. Those are all tax-deferred accounts, which means you've never paid tax on that money. And when you look at your statement, I had someone I was talking to the other day. They were showing me, hey, look at this. We've got roughly $1.3 million in their 401k.
Right.
And we had the conversation about how, well, I know the statement says 1.4 million, and it's your name on the statement, but we have to recognize that there's another name on that statement that's not listed.
The IRS.
It's called the IRS.
Right.
And so we're going to want to talk about that. What are you going to do about those taxes? How are you going to manage those taxes so that the smallest amount goes to the IRS and the biggest amount goes to you? And on top of that, the thing we need to remember there is this is kind of like a debt that you don't control.
Right.
And then the third question you need to answer, and that is, what are you going to do about all the healthcare costs out there? What are you going to do about the potential catastrophic healthcare costs?
And they're pricey.
It's only getting worse. It's going to be a bigger and bigger issue. What's your plan to handle that? If you want work to be optional, you got to cover those three areas. You got to make sure that you've got enough income to replace your paycheck. You've got to make sure that you've got a tax plan. Keep more money in your pocket, less money to the IRS. Number three, you've got to have a plan for healthcare. Right? Those are your big three decisions. So let's talk about Joe and Fred.
Okay.
Right? Two hypothetical, fictional people.
Okay.
Joe, he's sitting here and he has $1 million in his 401k. And Fred has $700,000.
All right.
So Joe has $1 million, Fred has $700,000. Who do you think is more ready to retire?
Well, you would think Joe, just based off the number.
He's got more money.
Sure.
Right? Oh, but wait a minute. Wait a minute here. Let's imagine that they need the same amount of income from their portfolio. Okay, so just for the sake of discussion, let's assume they need $3,000 a month. Right? Joe has $1 million. He needs $3,000 a month in order to make work optional. Fred has $700,000. He also needs $3,000 a month to make work optional. Who's in the better position to make work optional?
Seems like Joe.
You would imagine Joe, because he's got $1 million. Fred has $700,000, and they need the same amount of income.
Yes.
Right? But then we start diving into how they have their money invested.
Uh-oh.
And we learn that, hey, Joe, you've got your $1 million. When we run the analysis, we learn that your portfolio, the way it's structured, it's only generating 1.5% income, which is very common today. It's only generating $15,000 a year of income. Now, he wanted $3,000 a month, which was $36,000 a year. His portfolio is generating $15,000. Is he ready for work to be optional?
He's not.
No.
Not even halfway there with
that.
that.
Unless he makes some serious changes.
Yes.
Right? Now, by the way, he might be there if he's open to making the changes. But he's not there yet.
Yep.
Let's look at Fred. He's got $700,000. When you look at his portfolio, maybe it's generating income of $40,000 a year. He needs 36. Is he in a position where work could be optional for him?
He's getting there, very close.
Well, he needs 36 and he's getting 40?
Yeah, he's there. Yeah.
He's there.
Yeah.
Right? What if he was at 32? He's close. Right? Or 30. He's close. He's a lot closer than Joe is.
Right.
So it's not about the amount of money you have. If you want work to be optional, it's about the income that your portfolio is generating. And it's not just about the income. It's also about how sustainable the income is. How are you structuring your retirement savings so that they are generating enough income to replace that paycheck? Income that is stable, predictable, and growing over time, no matter what the market does, in both good markets and bad. How are you doing that?
Yep.
That's a question you have to answer. Here's what matters. What matters is, when you have this money in your 401k, you look at your statement. So this couple, let's call them, I got to come up with a new name. I so want to say Fred and Wilma Flintstone. I'm not allowed to because of copyright or something. So maybe I'll go with let's say a hypothetical couple named Barney and Betty.
Okay, gotcha. Never heard of them. But
never heard of them, and they are not related to Fred and Wilma at all. But we're going with Barney and Betty.
Yes.
And let's imagine that Barney and Betty they come to see me or someone, one of the advisors on the team here, and they say, hey, I'm looking to make work optional. I want to retire potentially, and I want to structure my finances in a way that makes sense. And one of the things they're worried about are taxes. And they bring in their statements. They say, oh, look, here's $1.3 million in a 401k.
Right.
Or maybe some in Barney's name, some in Betty's name, but you add it all up, $1.3 million. And if you notice on their statements, it says Barney, $800,000. And then on Betty's statement, it says Betty, $500,000. Or maybe the other way around, whatever.
Right.
Right? But you add it up, it's 1.3, and it's their names on the statement. And I had the conversation. I said, do you guys own a home? They said, yeah, we have a home. What's the value of that home? Well, here we are in Austin. A year ago, it was worth $500, but I think it's worth $800 right now if I sell it.
Inching up to $1 million.
Because the price of real estate's gone crazy. So I'm like, fair enough, whatever. Just call it worth $800,000. Do you owe anything? And they said, yeah, I think we owe about $230,000. I said, great. Well, let me ask you a couple questions about that home loan. First, is it like one of these variable rate contracts, or is it a fixed, like a 30-year mortgage fixed rate? What do you have? Actually, we refinanced recently because rates were so low. We actually have a 15-year fixed rate.
Wow.
It's fixed at like 2% or something for the next 15 years. Oh, that's fantastic. So I said, okay, so here's what I'm hearing you tell me. Your mortgage is $230,000. It's at 15 years. Roughly 2% a year. Your payment's the same. The rate's the same. Nothing changes. Is that correct? Yep, that's how it works. Are you sure that's how it works? I mean, could the bank come to you and say, you know what? I know that you owe us $230,000 on your $800,000 house, but you know what? We've decided we don't like that. And we think we're going to increase how much you owe us. You now owe us $300,000 on the house, not $230,000. Could your bank do that?
No.
Of course not. Well, could they maybe change the interest rate because they just feel like it? Like, we set this deal up with you at 2% for 15 years. This isn't really working out for us.
Right.
Can the bank change the rate? Maybe change the length of the loan? Can they do any of that? No, they can't. Of course they can't, right? I mean, it is what it is. Unless you decide to make a change, it's 15 years, it's 2%, and you're just going to pay it down during that time, right? Yep. And they're like, yeah, that's it. So $800,000 house, $230,000 loan, this is set in stone. Let's compare that to your 401k, where you've got $1.3 million between you. And right now, I know it only says your name on these accounts. So just like your name is on your house, which is worth $800,000 now, your name is on these accounts. They're like $1.3 million. But here's the deal. You've got debt. Just like you have debt on your house, you got debt on this 401k. But the difference is, with your house, the debt is linked to a bank. With your 401k, it's linked to the IRS. Mm-hmm. Every time you pull money out of there, the IRS, they're going to take a chunk, right? But here's the difference. With your bank, who controls the debt with your bank? You control the debt.
Yep.
In other words, it doesn't change unless you choose to change it. What about the debt that the IRS has in the form of taxes on your 401k? Who controls that?
Not Barney and Betty.
Yeah, do you control it?
Nope.
No, who controls it?
IRS.
Yeah, the IRS, or more specifically, the bozos in Washington, D.C., who don't know how to balance a checkbook, control that debt.
Yeah.
And unlike a bank who actually has to balance, their accounts, the bozos in DC don't. And so if they've decided, we've decided to spend a bunch of money and we don't have enough money to pay for it, what can they do? With a stroke of a pen, they can raise taxes. They're talking about it right now. And the minute they raise taxes, as you like to say, Zach, boom. What happens to the debt on your 401k the minute they raise taxes?
Skyrocketing.
It goes up.
Yep.
It goes up. You don't control the debt. It's kind of like the bank on your house deciding, your loan's $230. We've changed our mind. Let's make it $300. That's what it's like. So the question you have to ask yourself is if you want work to be optional, you absolutely must have a plan in place to deal with that debt and your retirement accounts when you're retired, also known as taxes. And whether you use Roth conversions or maybe move money to insurance, we might talk about that a little bit later, also tax-free if you do it right. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what's your plan?
Third question, we're going to talk about healthcare. This is a sensitive topic for a lot of people. Some people don't want to discuss this.
Well, the other thing is it's also a big topic.
Yeah.
So I was talking to someone the other day, and a very nice couple, and he is 61 years old. The gentleman is, and the wife, a few years younger. And he was telling me, he's like, man, I'd really love to retire. He's like, we're talking about making work optional.
Yes.
He's like, I'd love to retire. Maybe do something else. Maybe start a consulting firm or something. In fact, that was exactly his thought. He liked that idea. Like, I like the idea of doing a consulting firm that way because, right now he makes a pretty decent amount of money, but he's saying, it's like work. It's gotten really stressful. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of deadlines. He goes, man, if I could be a consultant, because I asked him, I said, hey, what's your ideal scenario? He says, ideally, I could just be a consultant. I could just, maybe work part-time, pick and choose the projects I do and, be a lot less stress.
Right.
And I said, well, what's stopping you? He says, well, a couple things. Number one, I'm not real sure how it would work. Like, he goes, Mike, all my life I've just been saving money.
Yep.
Like, how do I structure my finances to reflect a new change in my life like this? We talked about that a segment or two ago. He goes, secondly, I know I got to do something about taxes. We talked about that last segment, but here's kind of the one thing that's really blocking me. What do I do about my health insurance? I'm 61. My wife's 57. We're pretty healthy, but, gosh, he goes, I got a buddy who, out of the blue got sick and he spent some time in the hospital and thank goodness he had insurance. Otherwise it would have cost a ton of money. It still cost him a bunch of money, but it could have been way worse. What if that happens to me? Right? What if we get sick? Hey, I'm not going to be healthy forever.
Right.
Right? I asked him, so let me get this straight. The one thing that's really stopping you from doing what you really want to do, we think you've got enough money, is as long as you have your money set up the right way, you're okay there. But the one thing that's kind of really getting in the way, the one big roadblock, is your health insurance. He's like, honestly, he goes, that's it. I don't know what I would do. So let's imagine you're like that gentleman. He worked for a pretty big company. And I said, well, here's how this works. I said, so here's what you need to plan on. If you would like to do this, this is how the health insurance will work in the early stages. Then we'll talk about later on.
Okay.
Right? In the early stages, Cobra kicks in for 18 months. So you can keep the same health insurance you have right now. The problem is, instead of the company paying for it,
we're paying for it. You
now,
are.
Yeah, you got to pay for it.
Yep.
He's like, yeah, how much would that be? Well, if there's two of you and your wife you're covering, it could be $1,600 a month.
Pretty expensive.
Yeah. And he said, but still, he's thinking, wow, I thought it'd be way more than that. Right? But still, $1,600 a month. We're talking 20 grand a year.
Right.
That's probably that. By the way, he told me, he goes, that'd be my biggest bill, but I think I could swing that.
Sure.
And then what happens is that's only going to last for a year and a half. So let's imagine he just turned 61 and his wife just turned 57 for the math here. You go a year and a half, now you're 62 and a half, she's 58 and a half. Now Cobra's done. But Medicare hasn't kicked in yet because Medicare doesn't start till you're 65. So what do you do then? Then you go to healthcare.gov and you go out and you just buy insurance. And it's guaranteed insurability. And here's what happens. You're probably going to pay about the same amount of money. So it's not going to be any cheaper.
Right.
So it's just a different company, but it's going to be probably pretty similar to what you have now. He's like, oh, okay. Well, that doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world. And I said, then when you hit age 65, because remember, he was 61, so it's going to happen 4 years from now. When you hit 65, you're getting on Medicare. And here's the deal. You go on Medicare, you get a Medigap plan that's like Cadillac plan. That's going to cost you $250, $300 a month.
Yep.
At least it would today. It might be slightly more, 4 years from now. But your wife, she's still younger, so she's still going to be on healthcare.gov. So instead of paying $1,500, $1,600 a month, maybe you're paying like $1,000 a month now.
Okay.
So you get a little bit of a break.
Sure.
And when she hits 65, you're both on Medicare. Now you're down to like $600 a month between you total. And now you're in a lot better place. So once he understood that, though, he's like, wow, maybe work could be optional for me then. Maybe I could go off and do my own thing, which is really cool. But then I said, whoa, not so fast. There are healthcare costs in retirement that even Medicare doesn't cover. He's like, well, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? I said, well, I'm talking about, and this is the dreaded phrase that people hate to hear. I'm talking about long-term care. You see, it used to be when my grandparents retired, they retired at like 62, 63, 64. He lived to 67, died from a heart attack. Did he need long-term care? Not at all. But my grandmother, who was still alive, she kept going. And she lived long enough where she had some health problems, but the medical world had advanced. And instead of her dying, they kept her alive. And they kept on keeping her alive. And eventually, my grandmother ended up with Alzheimer's. Never would have had Alzheimer's in the past because she would have died. But no, the medical world kept her alive because of medical advances. She had Alzheimer's, and she lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of her life, of her retirement savings. In fact, the rest of her money she lost to the nursing home.
Yep.
And one of the things that's kind of interesting today is that right now, a lot of people, life insurance is becoming a really hot topic. And the reason for that is, for a lot of people, they're worried about taxes and retirement. If you design and utilize life insurance contracts the right way, it can help with taxes. But here's the other thing. Life insurance contracts today, the death benefit can also be used to pay for long-term care. And so, one of the things I talked about with this gentleman is say, look, you got tax problems, you have healthcare problems. Maybe we should be investigating whether or not we should be including certain types of life insurance contracts in the mix. His case, it actually made sense. Doesn't make sense for everybody. It does not make sense for everybody.
But in his case, it did.
But the point, though, is what are you doing about this?
Yep.
What are you doing about potential healthcare costs? Whether it's regular health insurance expenses, whether it's Medicare, long-term care. Hey, health insurance, the cost, we all know the cost is going up and up every year. What are you doing about it? You've got 3 questions you need to answer. You want work to be optional? Got to get your portfolio structured so that it generates income to replace your paycheck. Number 2, got to deal with taxes. Number 3, what about healthcare? Those are the 3 decisions, the three strategies you've got to employ to make work optional. I don't want you to miss out. This can be the easiest path to complete financial security. All right, we got to wrap. That's our show this week. We will catch you next week. Take care, everybody.